What is up, everybody? Welcome back. This is the first weekly update for the Ahsoka series from Star Wars. We've got episodes one and two. We were lucky enough to get a two-episode premiere, thankfully. Relatively new concept from Star Wars. This is the second full video back from our hiatus. Season two is well underway, like I said. We've got Jared back for another video. He's going to help us get through this Star Wars Ahsoka series and really break it down. But with that being said, let's get straight into it. I thought we had a good first two episodes overall. I was definitely not disappointed at all. I liked what I was seeing. I thought, we got reintroduced to all these characters. It was cool to see who was acting who, in that sense, and who was portraying each character from Rebels. I thought we got a good amount of action. There was no slow start like Andor. We got straight into it from the very get-go. I liked that. I didn't see any there was nothing blatant that stood out to me that I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not what we were looking for. This is off to a rough start. And overall, I come away feeling definitely encouraged going forward. I think this was a good start to the series. It set a good bar for expectations, a good precedent. And I was overall happy with what I got. But, we'll obviously get more into it. Jared, what are your general thoughts on the first two episodes before we get started here?
I was very impressed. My favorite thing to take away from the series, this is something that even bad Star Wars projects have, is good visuals.
Yeah,
This
for
show
sure.
is
CGI was
really
on
pretty to
point.
look at. Yeah, absolutely. And there's some very pretty shots that I remember. The one that sticks in my mind the greatest is the end of episode 2 when they are leaving Lothal in Ahsoka's T6 shuttle. It
Agreed.
is a very pretty shot where the camera has stayed on the porch of this little balcony thing, and it just watches as the ship, leaves the city. It's really
Lothal
pretty.
as a whole, for that matter, looked really good in my eyes. Like the way they portrayed it, and obviously it's been upgraded since the time of Rebels. It kind of looks like post, um, you know, post original trilogy, post, this new era of Star Wars. This looks like our new Coruscant. From my eyes, just the way the city was laid out and everything, and how highly advanced it appeared to be compared to what we saw when we were in Rebels. That's just my thoughts, though. I quickly thought I was like, is this our new Coruscant maybe for this era of Star Wars?
That very well might be what they're looking to do, but overall, I believe this is our first time getting Lothal in live action,
Yeah,
and it absolutely left a stunning impression on me. Something that I feel like Star Wars planets too often do is feel less like planets and more like biomes, like just one part of a world. Because generally speaking, Star Wars planets are just one biome,
yeah,
like Hoth, Tatooine, Kashyyyk, etc.
Kamino.
But yeah, Kamino especially. Um, Lothal is visually striking. There's a lot going on to it. You have all the content from Rebels is still there, like the communications tower that gives us a little bit of the history if you know about that. You have some of the politics on the planet, not much, just seeing a couple of the officials, some of the people, and then of course the beautiful architecture going on.
Yeah, I agree. And it was cool to see that they brought in the governor. He was portrayed really well, I thought. The new governor from Rebels, for those who remember. I thought he was portrayed really well, It was 1-to-1. I'm sure they got the same actor back, but I thought that was a great portrayal. Lothal looked amazing, you're right. This is our first time seeing it in live action. The communications tower, great callback, along with the railroad that leads up to it was great. It was, perfect. Seems like we're watching Rebels, live action now, obviously. And it was cool to see the cast. We haven't gotten to see everyone yet, of course. I did not see Zeb, and we won't see Ezra probably for a little while. But we got to see Hera. I thought she was done pretty well. She was probably done the worst of the characters, in my opinion. I thought everyone else kind of looked similar to what they did in Rebels. She looked a little bit off, in my opinion, but you can only do so much with the aliens in Star Wars. And but Ahsoka looked really good. I thought Sabine looks pretty accurate. And obviously, you got Chopper. I don't know if this is our first time seeing him live action. I feel like we might have seen him in a cameo before, but he's back. So I thought it was really good. You're right. I think we're both kind of in agreement there with our general thoughts. So with that being said, let's dive straight into episode one. In my opinion, it was my favorite of the two. I liked episode one more, and we got off to a quick start in episode one. So if I pull up, my notes, the very first thing I wrote down was about like 2 minutes into the episode, I feel like, where we get off to that quick action right away. Balin and his apprentice hijacking the ship, and the first thing that I thought, I really like the episode overall, but if I had to like critique one part, it would be the very beginning. The writing just did not kind of sit with me well. Like you get the codes from the ship, and your first thought is, yeah, yeah, let's bring them right on. You know, let's get these guys in here. There's only like two Jedi left in the galaxy, but I'm sure they're heading right for my ship. So they bring them on, and they're just so nonchalant about it. And you know, they walk right onto the ship, housing this like crazy important prisoner. That part didn't so well with me. Did you have any specific thoughts about that, or did you just it kind of go over your head and maybe I'm thinking too much on it?
Yeah, and no, that definitely stood out to me. I saw the captain say, "I'll call their bluff," and I'm like, "What are you gonna do?
Yeah,
Like
like
blast them?" Because that's what you should have done, considering you're housing a
like the most
imperial
important
witch.
prisoner there is right now,
Yeah, uh,
with
yeah,
no extra protection and everything. Like that scene seemed a little bit like
right. A
off.
little contrived.
But you know, that's nitpicking at that point. I also thought Balin and his apprentice, they made really good first impressions, especially Balin. I love his voice. Like I love the actor who's playing him. I thought it was a really badass voice. I was getting almost Qui-Gon Jinn vibes from just hearing him talk. I was like, this guy sounds, like he knows what he's doing, like a very powerful guy. I thought he's been portrayed very well. The apprentice too. I thought she was pretty badass. And that's it for them. You know, it was cool to meet them. We get them on screen right away. We waste no time. And it's the big scene from the trailer. And, you know, as you and I both know very well, Star Wars loves their lightsabers down the Rebel hallway scenes. We've gotten like three different ones from Vader. Now we get one from Balin. You know, time and time again, those will never
Darth Maul
fail.
got one. Oh,
Oh,
actually, no,
yeah.
he didn't get a
Everyone
lightsaber.
gets one. You can't be a villain if you don't have a Rebel ship hallway scene. And then from there, we get to Lothal and the governor's giving a speech for the presentation of the mural with Ezra and all the rebels cast. And this is what was the other part that kind of didn't sit well with me because I was like, what are we doing here? Even if it's nitpicking, it did stick out to me. Sabine fleeing Lothal scene that made no sense to me. I failed to understand what was behind that and what was causing it and like what why couldn't you just present the mural that you're in and then why are you making it look like you're being chased down and like you're portraying yourself as a villain for like absolutely no reason when you could have just gone out there and talked? That seemed really stupid to me. Because it was just so unprovoked. Like it was so avoidable, and she just kind of did it for no reason. Did you think anything of that, or is it again just me maybe nitpicking an episode that I shouldn't be?
I also did a little bit of digging into that. At this point in the timeline, Sabine is 30 years old.
Right.
So I understand this kind of deviant behavior when she was like younger in Rebels. That was
Yeah,
kind of
because
her
she was like
character.
19 when Rebels started,
Yeah.
around that roughly.
And now I just think it's a little bit like ridiculous, but I also think it's somewhat intentional for us to kind of dislike Sabine in this earlier episode, considering I think they're setting her up for a very big character arc.
Yeah, me
With
too.
her,
That.
yeah, I mean, just by the end of episode two, you can see that she's taking her responsibilities a lot more seriously, as she's, spoiler alert, I mean, just in case, but she's accepting to become a Padawan again. She's flying the galaxy with
Which I'll
Ahsoka to
never
get something
understand all
done.
that. I mean, she's not force sensitive at all. Even Hu Yang, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Even he confirms it. Like she has no force abilities, has basic sword wielding abilities, and yet she's Ahsoka's apprentice when that should clearly be Ezra, if he's ever found. So that didn't make as much sense to me.
I believe at this point in the timeline that Ezra is a full Jedi, and I don't think he really needs
Yeah,
training anymore by this point. But I do think it's a really odd choice, especially, I mean, she's 30 years old, you know?
that too.
How
Yeah, it's just.
how old are you gonna be to when you get your Jedi training, man?
But like, but how can you even? I mean, I'm sure they'll just come up with an excuse for it. But how can you really be a full Jedi without extensive knowledge of the Force or like ability to use the Force? Because you're so clearly at a disadvantage to anyone you come into contact with. The first time she has a run-in with a basic apprentice, she gets stabbed through the gut, and and that's after getting some training. That's not new. I mean, maybe you can say she's rusty, it wore off, whatever. But I mean, I just don't really see how that arc develops. It's coming off a little forced to me. Maybe my mind will change as we progress. But right now, that's how I feel about Sabine's Jedi arc that she's going on.
I feel like across the show, Sabine is going to have a rivalry with the apprentice of Balin.
I think
I
so
feel like
too.
they'll come into contact a few more times just as a physical show of her growth as a Jedi. But with no force sensitivity, that does kind of lead you to wonder, you know? That is a very interesting choice, especially that they confirmed that. But maybe they're just going for the message of anyone can be a Jedi as long as your heart's in the right place kind of thing. Which, if that's the case, then sure, good enough, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, that just feels like we're straying away from what it means at this point, especially because in the broader sense of this period of the timeline, we do have Luke wherever he's at right now. He is building his new Jedi Order. We know it fails eventually. Spoiler alert, but like this is what's happening right now. So if you are a Jedi, that's not Ezra, Ahsoka, the big guns, etc. Should you not be getting funneled directly to Luke? Like this is the big guy. We know Luke and Ahsoka have contact, so it's like that also makes no sense. Or is it like, do you think he'll reject it because his new order does is all force sensitive people? So do you think he'll reject you because you are not force sensitive? In which case, it makes sense. But I feel like that just further proves my point. Is like, why are we pushing this arc if we know it's not quite there?
Maybe they'll give us a twist at the end. Maybe it was just all like some
Ideally,
elaborate ploy to just have
right.
us believe that there's no force sensitivity when there is, or
Yeah,
not.
and I mean maybe if there is force sensitivity, it just feels so awfully like forced and poorly written at this point. You want to like talk about the first Mando Jedi, but on the like same timeline, we're getting Grogu pushed as the first Mandalorian double Jedi, whatever. So it's just now it just feels like we're butting points, and so this is an interesting arc. I don't know if they're trying to salvage it and it was pushed by somebody else, but we'll see where this goes. It's certainly interesting. I get it if you want to train her as like a mercenary, like the Inquisitors are, with just no force. That I can get behind. That makes a lot more sense. But pushing her as a full blown Jedi is a tad bit confusing to me.
Speaking of Inquisitors, what did you think of Merrick's role in the first two episodes?
It's interesting because I don't quite get his purpose. Like we know what Balin and his apprentice are. We know they're mercenaries that are hired. Where does he fall? Like where does Merrick fall? Is he hired directly from is he hired directly from Thrawn and his people? Or was it Mary Elsbeth, right? Um is he hired by Balin as like an accomplice? I don't quite get where he was a cool character. Like he put up a fight against Ahsoka, So he's obviously that was one of my notes. He's obviously not just any Inquisitor because he did put up a fight. We've seen Ahsoka and Darth Maul and guys like that just dismantle Inquisitors and rebels. So we know he has a little bit more power. I don't quite know who he is. It's intriguing to me though. It's certainly intriguing. I like where it's heading with him. What did you think?
Yeah, no, he's definitely got something going on. I feel like he has some kind of ulterior motive. We haven't even heard him speak yet, so I feel
Exactly.
like there's something going on behind that, especially because, in my opinion, one of my predictions for the show after seeing these two episodes is that Balin is going to have a change of heart. They
I
kind
can
of
see.
teased it a little bit with this
Me and you
episode
differ
too.
on that a tiny bit. I think his apprentice is gonna have the change of heart, and I think I wrote that down too. I feel like they set it up perfectly where you can almost catch it as obvious that one of the two is gonna betray the other. That a betrayal is coming, either on her side or Balin's side. I predicted on her side, but could very well be Balin. But I felt like I saw the building of a foundation for a betrayal.
What I feel is that Balin has already experienced the Jedi Order. He knows
Hmm.
what it is to be a Jedi. His apprentice does not. His apprentice was trained under the guise of being kind of like a pseudo Jedi Sith hybrid almost. I'm not sure what they're going with that yet, but I mean, she seems pretty evil, you know?
Yeah, I saw the hints, but then I also see her like getting the orders, and she's like, "Wait, do I really want to be taking these orders? Like, is this really the best choice?"
Yeah, but she always looks to Balin for confirmation.
That's fair, yeah. That
So
is
I feel as if anything, she will betray Balin, but only because she sees him going closer to the light.
that could also be the case, yeah. I mean, I could see that that happening as well.
And that still leaves room for Merrick to do whatever he has to do. Maybe he's just the loyal one while Balin and Shin, squabble over where their true allegiance falls.
I also
We're
feel
not
like
sure yet.
Merrick could be the one who's like directly employed. Like he is just a leftover Inquisitor, and so he is directly employed by the Empire. But they looked at him and they're like, "Well, you need more help, so we'll bring in mercenaries to help you." And maybe he's that kind of role. That would make sense. But he's a good character. I'm just intrigued on where he fits in the hierarchy almost.
Yeah, I'm not ready to call him a good character yet, just because we don't know where he
That's
ends.
he made
But
a
I
good
will
first
say
impression
he's,
though.
yeah, very strong impression. Very curious to see what really happens with him.
Yeah, and as we move through, I mean, I'm kind of in the nitpick section of my notes here. But how did Ezra make that recording? Because he implied that it's after he's done what he did with Thrawn, and I could have missed it. Like I haven't rewatched Rebels in a little bit, so I could have just missed it. But like just when I'm watching it, he put it in the tense as if he's already been gone. Obviously, he couldn't really send a recording if he is. So that stood out to me, but I he also could have just recorded it before he knew what he was going to do. But even that is like you were in the middle of a battle. When did you have time to record? Am I missing something from Rebels that I'm just not remembering, or did you also agree that the recording seemed a little strange timeline wise?
I'm not really sure because that is his Rebels outfit, no?
Yeah, it is. I just
Right.
but because that's well, that is what he was wearing when he disappeared.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
just questioning because
assuming,
he was talking during the recording. He's like,
yeah,
"That's why I did what I did with Thrawn," and that part threw me off. But I could have just missed something, I guess, from the season 4 of
that
Rebels.
might be explained or it might not. I'm not really sure. It didn't really stand out to me as anything,
Yeah,
that
it's
big.
at this point that's just me nitpicking, but it was just something that
Yeah.
caught my attention. Um, moving on to more of the villain side of it to talk about Elsbeth's character. Interesting that she was the descendant of the Night Sisters. I didn't see that coming. Because when her and Ahsoka fought, obviously she put up a little bit of a fight, but like I didn't get the sense that there was any abilities there that we were missing. Did you expect that one?
That one kind of took me by
It was interesting.
surprise.
Like I don't mind it. Obviously some were gonna survive the Holocaust of what's it called of Night Sisters that we saw in Clone Wars, but it was cool. Like I thought I didn't mind it at all. She showed her slight abilities when putting the map in the pillar and whatnot, and but I thought that was a cool addition too.
Another thing I thought was interesting in episode 2 when she projects the little holograms of Shin, Balin, and Merrick, it didn't look like typical hologram technology. It kind of had like this little mystical air to it. So maybe that could be some of her Night Sister, magic working to project them or whatever. It just
Yep.
didn't look like what we were used to. So that was very curious. Maybe they'll explore more of her like abilities. And what did you think of that ring thing that they were making? Did that kind of remind you of Starkiller Base? Because that's
A
what I
bit.
immediately thought.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it serves a different purpose than Starkiller because this one is just to travel to another galaxy, which is the first that we've heard of that. Um, multiple galaxies in the Star Wars universe, but it makes sense that that's what they're using to explain uh, where Thrawn and Ezra have been. I thought it was fine though. I mean, it makes sense. You got to get there somehow. You're probably gonna need a bit of extra assistance to travel from one galaxy to another. So that I thought that part was cool. But as far as the map goes, just because we kind of briefed over it, leaving Sabine with the map and then her taking off with it, both of those are just didn't seem smart. Like Ahsoka, like if you're gonna say like the map stays here, take the map, just hold it. The map was on the table. If you wanted it to stay that bad, just go grab it and walk away with it. But instead, Sabine gets it, and the second Ahsoka left the room, you're like, well, we know how this is gonna go. And it kind of did make the next few minutes predictable. We know Sabine's gonna take off, and we know um, that the bad guys were gonna get it right back. And then transitioning from that into the next scene, very Darth Maul Phantom Menace esque, with the probe following Sabine and then reporting back to the hooded figure in the desert, sitting next to a ship that looked awfully familiar to Darth Maul's from a Phantom Menace. Overall, I feel like there's a big Phantom Menace vibe to that first episode.
Yeah, it even
Um,
ended with, you know, spoiler alert, a hole
yeah,
with Sabine Wren taking one to the abdomen.
exactly. So I felt a lot of Phantom Menace callbacks in that first episode, but um, other than right, like you just said at the end, she loses it, gets stabbed to the gut. I hate that. We both despise that. We've said that
Not happy with it.
before. That stop stabbing people in the gut and letting them survive. Chop a hand, slice a leg, something like that. Like Kenobi when he got like this tiny cuts on the arm in the Dooku fight. Like give us more of that if you're gonna let him survive, but stop with the gut stabs if they're just gonna come right back. It's
Kylo
so
Ren
infuriating.
taking a Wookiee bowcaster bolt to the
Oh,
stomach or wherever he got shot to the side, I believe, in
yeah,
The Force Awakens. That was actually a really cool part of that movie because in the next scene you see him limping and like
and like
smacking the
spilling
wound.
blood and like oh
Yeah,
man, no.
something like that
I
could have
hate the
worked
gut
just as
scene.
well.
But that wraps up my personal review of episode one. I gave it like a 7.5 to an 8 out of 10. What are your final thoughts on the last few scenes and everything that I just kind of briefed over before?
I don't feel like it's fair to judge these two as separate episodes since they do kind of feel they did a very good job of, stringing them both together and
I
not
think
making
so
that
too.
feel
Yeah,
forced. So I think overall, I would give both of them a solid 9. I just didn't,
that's
there's
fair.
just a few
That's very
small
reasonable.
things that
Yeah, I think that's
I
very
could pick
reasonable.
apart, like the opening of episode 1, Sabine getting stabbed and just generally being a little off, dodging
Yeah,
the ops from Lothal for whatever reason.
this made no sense.
Overall, though, I mean, really solid episodes.
And of course, the two episodes premiering at the same time is a fairly new concept. You know, we saw it with Kenobi. Like, whenever we know that we're getting two in the same day, we know there's going to be a reason. So we know that one is going to connect to the other. At least, at least a good bit, because otherwise, there's just no reason to drop two completely different episodes on the same day. But I thought these connected really well. You're right. I thought one transitioned from the other perfectly, and they were both their own little mini story. And I leave that excited for episode three. You're right. I can totally live with a 9. If I had to combine both of them, I'd say like 8, 8.5. Um, but that was episode one. So let's move into episode two before we give our predictions for next for next week's episode. I didn't have much to say about episode two. I was just like impressed. You know, it wasn't anything too crazy, but I didn't have anything bad to say about it either. I liked it. We already kind of hinted at it. Like we both see a betrayal coming from one side or the other. Um, and just this is just like not like a takeaway or anything or like a knock. I just have like a genuine question. Where is Jason Syndulla, Hera's son? We know he exists because we saw him at the end of Rebels. Around this time, you'd think he'd be in like his late teens. Like I'm thinking like 16, 17 range probably. Um, I'm not sure exactly how the time lines up, so I could be wrong. But should he not be like a pretty strong force sensitive teen? Like I feel like we could use those, you know? Like those aren't exactly just growing on trees these days in this galaxy. So I hope we get to see like a little hint of him at some point because I feel like he could be a really commodity in this fight against Thrawn. What did that cross your mind at all?
Yeah, so we'll discuss this a little bit later. I'll have you, kind of mute yourself since I know a little bit of information that I'll discuss
Okay, yeah.
later. But that did kind of stick out to me. You
I
would
know
have
it's
thought,
early. I'm kind of thinking for the series as a whole. I hope we see a little bit because I could be off on
yeah,
the age, but he's got to be somewhere in the 10 to 20 range. Like that's as a force sensitive kid.
I agree. Episode 2 as a whole, moving away from the theoretical, the questioning that Sam has
Yeah,
just proposed, was very solid. So something that I need to praise this series for as a whole is how creative the action feels.
agreed, agreed.
When when Ahsoka was fighting the HK droids in episode 1, that felt ripped directly out of the Clone Wars animated TV show. It
I think so too.
was
Yeah,
amazing. With her cutting holes in the floor and the droids falling, amazing. Then her chopping them up. It was beautiful. Just like what Ahsoka would do. You know, you felt her character kind of projected through the way she fights. And then in episode 2, one of my favorite parts was her fight with Merrick.
me too.
Seeing,
Agreed.
yeah, seeing Merrick's abilities, seeing his really cool lightsaber throw, and then it comes back and Ahsoka just effortlessly like steps to the side, lets it go
I know
through. That
we've
was
seen
really
that
cool.
before from Inquisitors, where you kind of know it's coming, you just dodge the little throw. It's kind of a pointless move, but just something that the Inquisitors have shown to do to help their escape and their aid their tactics.
Very cool moments from all the characters. Hera's chase, not just
Yeah,
Ahsoka. Hera
I
was
like
getting
it.
in
You
on
know,
some of the
throwback
action.
classic Rebels action and
Yeah,
the ghost or the ghost.
very cool.
Or is that the
Very
Phantom?
impressive.
Which one is
It was
it?
just
That
the
the Phantom?
Phantom.
Yeah, that's the Phantom.
I don't think we've seen the Ghost yet.
No, we have not. I mean, you get a cameo of it in Rise of Skywalker at the end, but I don't think by that point it's being piloted by anybody we know. But yeah, you're right, and we already kind of touched on Merrick a little bit, but that was my last real note that I had for this episode that we hadn't really touched on. I feel like he has to be more than just your standard Inquisitor, just because of how I saw him fight and his role to still be alive this late in the timeline. Like Inquisitors aren't really a thing post Return of the Jedi, because obviously they would have been still helping Vader and they would have been attacking Luke because as far as we knew at the time, Luke was the only Jedi. So we have to assume that that the Inquisitors have died off by now. So for him to still be alive and for him to be putting up a fight against a well-established, powerful Jedi, you'd have to think that there's at least a little more to his character than we've been led on to so far. And I'm hoping we do get a tad bit more of that because That's got to be one of my guesses right now. Is that he's more than just your average Inquisitor.
I think there's definitely something going on with him. I feel like he serves a higher purpose.
Yeah. But with that being said, that brings us. Is there anything else you want to add about episode 1 and 2 before we move on to our predictions for future weeks?
That about does it. I just think it had stellar action, beautiful visuals, villains that can go somewhere really interesting, and very minimal problems other than what we nitpicked earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So with that being said, then let's move on to week three. Well, technically week two, but episode three coming next week. What are your first thoughts now that we've seen 1 and 2? Where do we think that this episode specifically is going to take us? I've been seeing YouTube stuff like about leaks and about the bad news for Ahsoka episode three, but I've been just staying away from it. I'm going into this series with as little, knowing as little as I can, so I can judge it as and not get my expectations high. What are your thoughts for just specifically week three? What do you think is coming?
In our previous video, I predicted some flashbacks with Anakin. Those are still a possibility. They can
Definitely
pop
on
up
the
really
table.
anywhere as long as they have somewhat of a good setup. We could see some of that as Sabina, as Sabine starts getting trained by
I was just
Ahsoka.
gonna say that. I totally agree.
Yeah. So maybe we'll cut back and forth with some of that. I think that would be interesting. I'm sure we'll see Balin, working towards finding Ahsoka, Ahsoka working towards finding Thrawn, finding the ship. Maybe we'll have an episode where they're on that ship trying to mess stuff up. So that's all I really can see for the immediate future. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. That was gonna be the first point I touched on. I think next week is our first opportunity to like a prime setup for a flashback right here. Ahsoka is training Sabine on the ship while they're in, hyperspace, whatever, like a New Hope esque. Um, and that she's struggling and she's just thinking. She's thinking back to my training, and obviously, hopefully, we would get a Hayden Christensen callback. I don't want to get my hopes up for Ewan like we talked about. I'm not gonna, you know, get excited for that. But at least in Anakin flashback, it feels like next week is our first prime opportunity for that. I agree with most of what you said. Really, it feels like because we got the tracker on the ship, they know where to go. What's interesting to me is who's gonna go. We know Ahsoka and Sabine are going. Are they gonna get help, or is it just gonna be the two of them going for it? Could we get a little Rex cameo? Maybe we need some help. Captain Rex, will you please help us? Stuff like that. But that's just. I think I agree with you. I feel like we're gonna get the journey to that ship. I would be surprised, but I'm guessing it's not totally off the table for us to get like a totally separate storyline in this episode of maybe like other characters who need to get developed before we can get into the action. But even then, that doesn't really cross my mind of who we would do. Maybe it's more focused on Balin and them, but I don't think so. I think we are gonna get Ahsoka and Sabine tracking down that ship, trying to just mess some stuff up and investigate. Obviously, I don't think they're going to succeed because we know that Thrawn does appear in the series at some point. So it's gonna be interested to see how it all goes down. And if they do make their journey this early in the episode in the 8 episode season to this other galaxy where they are, which we didn't quite touch on, but I thought it was a cool concept. Never seen before, all that stuff. But if they do make it, are they all going together so that Ahsoka and Sabine can team back up with Ezra, and then they'll be ready to fight when they team back up with Thrawn, and we'll get our first battle? Just seeing how everything is going to go down, I'm not quite sure, but I think we basically had the same thoughts of what's going to go on next week.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. And so, with those predictions being said, before we wrap up this episode, Jared, I know you want to get into some niche Lego talk for our niche Lego viewers. What do you got for us today?
Sam, you might want to mute up
All
or
right, let
deafen
me.
yourself. We got a little bit of spoiler action
All
going
right,
on.
I'll deafen
Warning for the
myself.
fans too.
Yeah, you give me a little wave when I'm ready to unmute.
Gotcha. So, of course, we can't neglect our
I'm
niche
just gonna
Lego
accept the
Star Wars
spoiler.
fans.
Give it to me.
We can't neglect our niche Lego Star Wars fans. So today I've got a little bit of discussion for you guys for the three, count 'em, three Ahsoka Star Wars sets that we've got for this series. Starting off with the smallest one, we have it's the E-Wing battle versus Shin Hati's Starfighter. Now, funny enough, isn't actually in the set. Oh, yeah, she is. She's just in the cockpit. So this is the only set that comes with like Morgan, don't Elsbeth, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Morgan
we'll go
comes
with it.
with blanket on the name Balin, and it comes with Shin. And then it also comes with, I believe this is the Starfighter pilot that was talking to Sabine when she was riding through Lothal. So
The
we get,
male one, I'm guessing.
yes, so we get the E-Wing. So that makes me think, will Shin be coming into a, ship battle with Lothal? Will the story go back to Lothal? And if so,
I
what's
certainly
there?
don't think we're done on the thaw.
Right. So that's it for that set. For the other sets, the second largest, the middle set, we have the T6 Jedi shuttle, Ahsoka Tano's, the red, the gray. Now this set comes with a couple of figs. We got the droid that Ahsoka's been rolling around with, the Jedi
Huyang.
Encyclopedia. Yeah. We've got Sabine Wren, and then this is the only set that comes with Merrick and Ahsoka too. Kind of odd that Ahsoka only appears in one set in her, own line, but
We might
is
have
what it
more to
is.
come, who knows?
Yeah. Now this set doesn't really set anything off for me. It just kind of seems like a general like show of what the series has. It keeps everything pretty clean. There's nothing that we haven't seen in these first two episodes. It only comes with the Starfighter. Might I say these sets are pretty well priced too. Comes with a fantastic Ahsoka figure with some amazing arm printing, something that I think Sabine's character could have benefited from as well, but it looks like they didn't want to give her the arm printing, is what it is. You can complain about it if you want. Merrick has some very interesting head molds for his helmet and his body armor, and then the same hilt that we've seen for the Inquisitors before. And that about does it for the T6 shuttle. Now, the set that has the biggest spoiler in it is the Ghost and the Phantom.
Okay.
uh, the Phantom 2, that is. And here's where the spoilers come. It comes with a a Mon Calamari, looks like a pilot, some kind of rebel officer. Now it also comes with Hera, Chopper, and here's the big spoiler. It comes with Jason Syndulla in Lego form.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
Just as we were
So
talking about it, that's a big
just what
spoiler.
we were
Damn, I
talking
should have
about.
muted.
Yep.
I should have muted. That's funny. So how what did you mention how like not, it's Legos, but what's the age range we're looking at if you had to guess?
So they still gave him the short legs. Lego, it's a little bit different from when most people were kids. There was
Hmm.
only the short legs and the normal sized legs,
Yeah.
but they also now have a medium sized leg.
Is
So
that what
this
we're
one
at with
comes with the short legs.
okay.
So that makes me think he's still on the younger side.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think
really
so.
want to look it up just because I've been spoiled on this for a really long time since I saw the sets come out. And, I just didn't want to dig any further. Knowing he was in the show was enough for me. But I believe he had green hair in Rebels. In his live action appearance, it looks like his hair has gone for a dark brown route. Still has a
That's
darker
what I
skin
was expecting,
complexion.
honestly. Was the
Yeah,
Kanan-esque
yeah,
brown.
very much Kanan-esque, which is very cute. Love to see that. This set comes with the entire Phantom. Looks a lot cleaner than the original one we got, and the Ghost too. It comes with both of them, together. In the background of the box art, you can see Shin Hati's Starfighter, the one that we saw from the first set. So that leads me to believe that we'll see some kind of confrontation between Shin and the crew of the Ghost.
I
You
would
know,
expect that, yeah.
yeah, maybe even as soon as next episode, That's a distinct possibility. But with Jason on board, not really sure what they'll do with that. So this set is, I believe, $140. Oh, 160. All right, well, that makes me a little unhappy.
Yeah.
Um, for 1,300 pieces, almost 1,400. So just slightly over what you like to see for a 10 cents per piece ratio. Overall, though, very cool sets, very insightful sets. They've got a lot of stuff going on for the show. And that's my analysis of the Ahsoka sets for our
Well, that
niche
that was a
Lego Star
big
Wars
bomb drop
audience.
you just leveled on the viewers there,
Of the
especially me.
Lego sets too.
I mean, it's but yeah, in our nichest area that we have on the show, and that's where we get the biggest bomb drop of today.
Exact. Don't
Hearing that he's
sleep on
going to
them.
be in it is crazy. Hearing that he's in the short leg phase is interesting. And that makes me think just right now, is he gonna take the Ezra route where you start in the cockpit of the Phantom running the guns and you move your way up through slowly learning the Force. And but it's gonna be interesting to see him in the show. Hopefully that's not just, a teased Lego and we never hear from him again. But a great
Lego's
Lego
been known
set.
to leak some information here and
That's
there.
true. Yes, you're right. A great Lego set today from Jared, as usual. These sets do sound actually pretty good compared to what I've been seeing in the other shows, from what you're telling me. So some great bombshells dropped. Great episode overall. Is there any final thoughts that you would like to add before we wrap up today's episode?
I'm happy. This is scratching the itch, man.
Yeah, me too. I don't want to get too excited here, but I would like to say that we might be righting the ship, in terms of Star Wars content.
I think
Yeah,
Ahsoka is good to
I
go.
thought it was great. Hey, I really don't have any closing thoughts. If you don't have anything else, then I guess we will just wrap this up here. Great start to this Ahsoka show. As you know, Jared and I will be here every week to break down each new episode. Obviously, this is a longer video today because we have 2 episodes to do. But you can expect us back next week, and you can expect tons of other content coming soon. We've got an extensive next few months planned, especially this coming week, next week. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed down below. Make sure your notifications are on. Season 2 is here, baby. We're off to a great start today. Jared, thank you again for another amazing episode. I think this might be our
Absolutely.
best one yet, honestly. And we
Leave
will
some
see you guys
comments.
next week.
Yeah. Ghost.